Hello and welcome to this week's Aussies Abroad News Wrap, where we'll whip through the headlines and get you up to speed with Aussies in action around the globe. And welcome to you, Corey McKernan, after another busy weekend of watching Aussies take on the world.
Yes, Jace, another golf major is in the books, plus we'll talk cycling, NFL, MotoGP, and the one I've been looking forward to, we've got an exclusive interview with Aussie Jake Matthews as he looks forward to his big fight versus Diego Sanchez at UFC 253 this coming weekend.
I was in grade 5 when he won the Ultimate Fighter, and I remember watching him when I was in grade 5. And, so I've watched him through his whole career and enough that I think I know, what he's going to bring, or what he can bring. It's just a matter of adapting when he changes his style of what he's doing.
And Jake is the subject of this week's Aussies Abroad feature, a fantastic in-depth look at his incredible journey, premiering this week on our Aussies Abroad platforms. More from Jake shortly. But first, let's get you up to speed with Aussies doing amazing things around the world, and we'll begin in Paris. As we welcome in our Aussies Abroad cycling expert, Matt Keenan, who must be ready for a good lie down after doing such a wonderful job leading SBS's coverage of the Tour de France over the last 3 weeks. Matty, welcome. And speaking of wonderful jobs, Aussie Richie Porte just hung in for 3 long weeks. He missed the birth of his daughter. His wife told him to get out there and make sure that sacrifice was worth it. And he certainly did.
Richie made all the sacrifices worth it to be able to reach the podium in Paris and become just the second Aussie to make it inside the top 3. Of course, Cadel Evans is the only Australian to have won the Tour, which he did back in 2011. But Australians have been going to the Tour de France since 2014, and it's taken until now to get a second one on the podium with Richie Porte. It was a phenomenal performance. And the images that we saw on the podium, it felt like Primož Roglič in second place, he'd lost the Tour, and it was Tadej Pogačar who won. But Richie, the expression on his face in third position, he looked like a guy who won third place, and he certainly had. At 35 years of age, this is a defining moment in Richie's career. And it also gives greater gravitas to a lot of his other victories, such as winning Paris-Nice, a big 1-week race in March in Europe, and also the Tour Down Under. Richie will go down as one of the greatest cyclists in Australian history. The other big Australian performance that we saw throughout this year's Tour was Caleb Ewan. He didn't win on the Champs-Élysées, which he desperately wanted to. It was the Irishman Sam Bennett who got the win. But Caleb won 2 stages, and he had a really difficult tour with his team. Each team starts with 8 riders. On day 1, this team lost 2 of their key riders. Former world champion Philippe Gilbert, he crashed and broke his patella. Another guy who's won multiple stages at the Tour and was a key part of the support network for Caleb, John Degenkolb. He crashed as well. He helped Caleb survive the first day, but he was eliminated after that opening stage as well. So Caleb had his back to the wall very early, and he came home with 2 stage victories. So in 2 participations in the Tour, Caleb Ewan has now won 5 stages, and he's still really only just getting started. He's 26 years of age. The unsung hero for Australian cycling throughout this year's Tour de France has been Alan Piper. He's what we call a sports director, or director sportif. He's the coach. He's the guy in the car calling the shots. The guy he did it for was Tadej Pogačar, the winner of the race. And it was meticulous detail. They prepared with less resources than their main rivals, Jumbo-Visma or Ineos Grenadiers, and they won the race. Sure, it was a Slovenian who won that stood on the podium in yellow, but it was an Aussie who was doing the puppet mastering from backstage and making sure that it all worked well. So hats off to Alan Piper. Now for the Australians, the next big objective is this weekend in Imola, the World Championships. They were originally scheduled to be in Switzerland, but because of the coronavirus, they've now moved to Italy. And there's a reduced amount of races, so we won't have the juniors or the under-23s that we normally have. It's just the elites. Unfortunately for Australia, Amanda Spratt, who for the last 2 years has medalled in the women's road race. She's been the silver medalist and the bronze medalist. And this was the year where perhaps a gold medal was awaiting because she just keeps getting better. She crashed recently in the Giro Rosa, the biggest tour for women. She says she's going to start. We'll see. We know that she's really tough. What we do know that the injuries that she has sustained will hamper her preparation, but don't put anything beyond Amanda Spratt. As for the men, the biggest prospect for the men is the individual time trial. Rowan Dennis is the defending champion. He's won that title for the last 2 years. In the road race, Richie Porte will go with no pressure. because he's just off the back of his biggest ever achievement, finishing third in the Tour de France. So there's plenty of prospects for the Australians at the World Championships this coming weekend in Imola, Italy.
Matty, congratulations on all your work over the last 3 weeks into SBS, who have extended the rights to the Tour right through to 2030. It couldn't be in better, more loving hands than your team.
It's a team that loves the Tour, and it's a team that loves the sport of cycling. SBS has really made cycling its own. For a long time, SBS was the channel that you went to for football or soccer. Now it's the channel that you go to for cycling, and it's going to be that way for at least the next 10 years, and that makes me pretty happy.
Mate, congratulations again on all your work. Enjoy a bit of downtime this week, and we'll talk to you again next week, hopefully talking about some Aussie gold at the World Champs.
It sounds like a plan.
To golf, and we had plenty of Aussies in action at the US Open, and I caught up with our Aussies Abroad golf correspondent in Luke Elvy. And joining us to look back at the US Open is our Aussies Abroad golf correspondent who's rocking the Patriots jersey on a Sunday is Luke Elvy. And Luke, it was a challenging week for our Aussie boys at the US Open.
No question, Corey. A real shame that none of them ever got in the hunt over the 4 days. Winged foot was such a challenge for a lot of players. 4 of the 9 strong Aussie contingent made the cut. The likes of Adam Scott, Jason Day, Cameron Smith, and 24-year-old Lucas Herbert from country Victoria, who ended up being top Aussie. He ended up in a tie for 31st with a strong final day. In fact, all Aussies performed nicely on a very challenging Sunday there at Winged Foot. But incidentally, it's the first time that no Australian has finished inside the top 30 of a major championship tournament since 2001, the Open Championship. So it goes to show just how strong our boys have been on a consistent basis for 2 decades. But this year, at this US Open, it just wasn't to be.
It wasn't, but we've still got the US Masters to come, mate. So if everyone out there that doesn't mind having a bit of a flutter, who would your pick be for the Masters that's coming up?
Well, if it was to be played when it was being played in the spring, how we're used to it all the time, and back in April with the form that Adam Scott had showed, I would have said he was absolutely one of the favourites to win a second green jacket. Sadly, since the lockdown, the likes of Adam Scott, Mark Leishman, Jason Day, although he's had sort of moments of form, and Cameron Smith, they haven't lit it up by any stretch. They haven't been great. They've been consistent without being great. Obviously, Leishman's had his struggles that we've talked about in the past. I would still say Adam Scott is your best chance, or our best chance, at being a real threat. He just plays so well around this golf course, as does Jason Day. But there's a lot of people now working hard to sort of be at that level, considering what we've just witnessed with Bryson DeChambeau. Length is a massive factor, particularly this fall, given the fact that it's going to be played in cooler temperatures than what the players are used to than it would be if it was held in the spring. So there's a few wrinkles to this Masters coming up that we're all excited to see. We just don't know how it's truly going to play out.
It is, and it seems to be a bit of a pattern emerging with our Aussie golfers. We've been getting off to good starts, and Hannah Green was no different on the LPGA Tour this week.
Yeah, shame for Hannah. She was right in the thick of it there in Portland on the LPGA Tour. Now, Hannah was the LPGA champion from last year. It was a phenomenal performance by the young West Australian to raise a major championship trophy there. And you're quite unexpected as early as it was in her career, but she's since won again, and this was the venue that she won for that second time after winning that PGA last year. So she loves this venue, loves this tournament, but on Sunday, sadly, she faded so much so that she shot an over par round and ended up tying for 12th.
To MotoGP now, and it was a frustrating weekend for our Aussie hopefuls at Mazzano in Italy. Now, Jack Miller actually qualified second for the MotoGP. He suffered a scare when he was hurled from his bike in a big high side during the warm-up, but fortunately he was okay. He took his position on the front row of the grid. However, it was clear something wasn't quite right with his Ducati. He started mysteriously falling back through the pack in those early laps, culminating him in pitting and withdrawing from the race just 8 laps in. Now, incredibly, upon closer inspection, it turned out that Jack's bike had actually inhaled one of the helmet visor tear-offs from Fabio Quartararo. He'd torn and tossed it on lap 2. Jack's bike actually sucked it into its air filter and overcooked the bike. Now, Jack managed to see the funny side. He posted a pic of the culprit on Instagram, but it was unbelievably bad luck, just a freak occurrence and a costly one too, given he was actually beautifully placed to grab a big bag of points. But fortunately, Jack remains within a race of the championship lead as they head to Catalunya this weekend. Meanwhile, in Moto2, Aussie Remy Gardner had to sit out the race in Mazzano after he underwent surgery in Barcelona on his fractured thumb and foot during the week. Following that nasty crash in the warm-up last weekend, he had a plaque and 6 screws inserted into that left hand. Now, Remy actually lives in Barca, and that's where the next race is, so he's hopeful of being back in action this coming weekend. Now, personally, I'd be off work for about 3 months, but these guys are seriously tough and more than just a little crazy. And some exciting news for Remy during the week. He actually signed with the Red Bull KTM team for 2021, setting him up for his season next year. Now, speaking of exciting, it was a thrilling finish to the legendary 24-hour of Le Mans Classic over the weekend. Aussie Matt Campbell finishing second in his class after a race that went all the way down to the final 24 minutes after a safety car. Matt was behind the wheel in those closing laps. He sneaked home in second position, just 3 seconds ahead of the third place team in a nail-biting finish. Let's talk mixed martial arts. And Corey, it's a huge week ahead and a wonderful opportunity for Aussie fighter Jake Matthews. He's headed to Fight Island for this weekend's UFC 253 showdown with the legendary Diego Sanchez.
Yes, Jake, he's one of my favourites. We don't have many Aussie fighters in the UFC, and I've been very fortunate. I've met him on a number of occasions. Fantastic young bloke is Jake Matthews. And this week we jumped on a Zoom for an exclusive chat with Aussies Abroad.
What are you expecting from Diego, given his style can change from round to round? He can stand up or he can take it to the mat.
It's we have a really open mind with this fight because, like you said, Diego, it's not just that he could. It's like I honestly don't even know if Diego knows which Diego is going to come to this fight. Is it going to be the aggressive brawler? Is it going to be the wrestler? Is it going to be more withheld this fight and be trying to be more technical? Who knows? But that can also change round to round. So I have to be able to and in the middle of the round too. So I have to be able to adapt and change, with every minute that passes. So he could be relaxed and be a bit technical, and then I could hit him with a good punch, and then that old nightmare comes out and he just starts coming at me. So who knows? But most fights I try and keep an open mind. I've had some fights where we've trained so hard for this is what they're going to do, and they come out and do the exact opposite, and it throws you off. You're like, hold on, this isn't supposed to happen. This isn't right. So, try to keep a real open mind about it, and just wherever the fight goes, we'll be ready.
We were fortunate to spend about an hour chatting with Jake, and we'll be posting plenty of that conversation online this week. We've got lots more of Jake talking specifically about UFC 253, what it means to face Diego, who he grew up admiring, how he plans to take down the nightmare. Plus, we'll be releasing our in-depth Aussies Abroad Jake Matthews feature this week. We'll explore Jake's incredible journey from just wanting to keep fit for footy as a teenager to becoming one of the UFC's youngest ever fighters. He's so well-spoken, Corey. He's got great things to say, and I thoroughly enjoyed sitting down and having an extended chat with him.
Yeah, he's got a really healthy perspective on life, very mature for his age, and he's going to need all that maturity this weekend when he steps into the octagon against Diego Sanchez.
So head to aussiesabroad.tv, follow the link to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's the easiest way to be kept up to date with all our latest videos and podcasts. Well, each week we scour the internet to find something you might not have spotted in the mainstream media, but we think might be worthy for you to have a gander at. And Corey, we know you're a fine AFL footballer, but were you one of those really annoying kids that were fantastic at other sports too?
Yeah, I wouldn't say excellent at all sports, but the thing I would recommend, and the thing that I personally did, I think you try out as many sports as you can. And probably what happens out of that is that if you've got that hand-eye coordination, it probably then spreads across a number of different sports. So for all those kids out there, try as many sports as you can.
Well, the great Ash Barty was obviously one of those kids who were good at every sport that she put her mind to. Obviously a prodigious teen tennis talent. She then took a break from tennis, went and played professional cricket in the WBBL. And on the weekend, while she took a break from travelling due to COVID, she just happened to win the Brookwater Golf Club Championship. And she didn't just win the championship. She dominated the match play final. She won it 7-5. Her boyfriend, Gary Kissack's actually the trainee pro at Brookwater. They actually met there in the pro shop about 4 years ago. Ash has been playing plenty of golf there lately with Gary and Pat Rafter, and her handicap coming down from 10 to 4
Actually, her dad, Robert, he represented Australia as an amateur. So she's been around golf all her life, which I know from experience that really does help. I wouldn't be surprised if she goes pro when she's done with tennis and has a third professional career. What an incredible sporting talent she is.
Speaking of incredible talents, one of our very finest is also one of the world's very finest. Aussie Sam Kerr announced this week as the second highest ranked female player in the new FIFA 21 video game, which truly an amazing acknowledgement of her remarkable talent. And as big a star as she is right now, that star's only going to get bigger and brighter as the world counts down to the 2023 FIFA World Cup here in Australia. She'll be on every second billboard, every TV ad for months leading into that World Cup, and rightly so. She's a magnificent ambassador for Australia, for the world game, and of course for women's sport in general. She's a real trailblazer. She's hopefully going to open the eyes of corporate Australia and how they view the commercialisation of women's sport in this country. So Sam, congratulations on being ranked a 92 in FIFA 21. Now the only issue for the rest of us is how we're going to afford you and get you into our team, because you're not going to come cheap, that's for sure. Well, that's it for this week's Aussies Abroad News Wrap. For all the latest news, scores and profiles on Aussies doing fantastic things around the world, subscribe to our Aussies Abroad YouTube channel. You can follow us on social media, and you can listen to us at a podcast wherever you get your favourite pod. Be sure to check out all our Jake Matthews content this week leading into UFC 253, and good luck to Jake and all our Aussies competing around the world this week. Thanks so much for your time. We'll catch you next week on Aussies Abroad.